Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Aditya Siddhi Chakravarti from Dr. Talks. Today, we will be dealing with aortic regurgitation. We have already posted a video on aortic stenosis. This is the continuity. We will deal with aortic regurgitation. As I said earlier, the aortic wall has got two components. First one is the valves. This is the aortic annulus. And it has got the tricuspid valves. The right, left, and the non-coronary valve. These are three valves of the aortic valves. And you have got this is the annulus. And you have got the aorta arising from here. Now, aortic regurgitation can occur because of two reasons. One is the valve reason. The problem in any of these three is the valve reason causing aortic regurgitation, or it can be secondary to a root problem. This is the root of the aorta involving annulus, the ascending proximal ascending aorta. If this root undergoes for dilatation, this will pull the leaflets apart, resulting in defective closure and secondarily causing aortic regurgitation. In root problems, the valves may not be involved. So, these are the two types of aortic regurgitation. So, first problem with the aortic valves. So, what are the causes of aortic regurgitation due to valve involvement? First is the rheumatic heart disease. Rheumatic heart disease causing aortic regurgitation is usually associated with an aortic stenosis or some mitral valve involvement. Isolated aortic regurgitation per se is usually not rheumatic in origin, but if it's present, it is more common in men. And aortic regurgitation with a mitral valve involvement is more common in female. An isolated AR because of rheumatic origin is more common in men. The second cause, what happens in rheumatic heart disease? A chronic inflammation leads to valve thickening, valve shortening, and there is defective opening and closing of the valve during systole and diastole. The second common cause is the infective endocarditis. The infective endocarditis can occur on a damaged valve because of a congenital damaged valve, or it can be because of a rheumatically damaged valve or some prosthetic valve. This infective endocarditis can erode the valve resulting in acute aortic regurgitation. First, you have to understand this acute aortic regurgitation is completely different from a chronic aortic regurgitation. Acute aortic regurgitation is essentially a medical emergency. Acute aortic regurgitation, what happens? The blood from the aorta enters into the left ventricle. Suddenly it enters. The left ventricle is not prepared to receive this volume of blood. So what happens? Left ventricle end diastolic volume increases very rapidly, and left ventricle end diastolic pressure also increases very rapidly. So this pressure will turn up to the left atrial pressure will increase. The patient will go for acute pulmonary edema, and the patient will go for cardiogenic shock and arrest. So acute infective endocarditis, the acute aortic regurgitation is a medical emergency. The third causes includes the myxomatous degeneration. This can involve can occur along with a mitral or the myxomatous degeneration of mitral valve, the tricuspid valve, and aortic valve. They can occur in unison. Then congenital disorders. What are the congenital disorders? It can be because of bicuspid aortic valve. We have dealt in detail about the bicuspid aortic valve on our discussion on aortic stenosis. You can go back and look into it, or it can be seen in ventricular septal defects. And VSD can push the leaflets along the flow of blood and can cause of aortic regurgitation. The other causes for aortic regurgitation can be the two main reasons. One is the syphilis. So what is so unique about syphilis? The syphilis can cause a primary valve problem and aortic regurgitation. The syphilis can also involve in the ascending aorta. It will cause inflammation and medial restriction and fibrosis of the ascending aorta, and causing root problem. It can cause both valve problem and root problem. Both the ways it can cause aortic aneurysms, and it can also cause aortic aneurysm, aortic regurgitation, and aortic dissection. Everything is possible. The last common cause is the ankylosing spondylitis. We can cause aortic valve problems. Now, I'm into the root problems. So what has to happen? The aortic root has to enlarge. When does it enlarge? Enlarge in Marfan syndrome or cystic medial necrosis, cystic medial degeneration, aortic aneurysms, dissections, hypertension. Long-standing hypertension can cause ascending aortic dilatation. All these causes will result in aortic root enlargement. So what happens when aortic root enlarges? This will also pull the wall defects away from each other and cause aortic regurgitation. So what is the pathophysiology? So what happens in aortic regurgitation? So aortic regurgitation during LV systole, the left ventricle will compress the blood from the LV into the aorta. There is blood going from LV to aortic systole. During diastole, ideally the aortic walls have to close. Only when the aortic wall closes, the blood will remain within the aorta and move into the periphery. Here, because of a faulty walls or a faulty root, there will be regurgitated flow of blood from the aorta into the left ventricle during the diastole. So, the left ventricle will receive more blood during diastole. So, what heart has to do? Heart has to maintain the cardiac output. How does it do? It has to receive this extra volume of blood. So, to receive this extra volume of blood, the left ventricle will go for eccentric hypertrophy. Normally, left ventricle will enlarge and receive extra volume of blood. Once it undergoes extra, it will increase. There will be increase in the end systolic dimension, end diastolic dimension. There will be increase in the ejection fraction. How does ejection fraction increases? Ejection fraction increases because it includes both the volume of blood that is pumped from the LV into the aorta and the volume of blood that returns from the aorta back to the LV. There is a development of a reverse pressure gradient from the aorta to the LV, and it gradually decreases with the diastole and it ends in the late part of the diastole. Hence, you have got a decrescending diastolic murmur. So, the LV enlarges initially. There is no problem with the systolic functions. The patient can remain asymptomatic for a large period of time. But once the patient will go for LV systolic dysfunction, then the symptoms begins to arise. In later stages, the LV dilatation will cause the increase in the left atrial enlargement. It can go for pulmonary hypertension, and in very terminal stages, the patient can have RV failure. What are the symptoms? The symptoms, since aortic, any regurgitant lesion, as I said earlier, will have more of palpitation. Aortic regurgitation, palpitation is the predominant symptom because there is more volume of blood in the heart, especially palpitation when lying down at night. That is the classical symptoms. So, volume overload symptoms because of palpitation. The other key point is that during the LV systole, large volume, the ejection fraction is increased, large volume of blood is pushed from the left ventricle into the aorta. So, the aorta has to expand to receive this huge volume of blood. So, there will be a fall in the diastolic blood pressure. There will be increase in the cardiac output, that will increase the systolic blood pressure, and also there will be a fall in the diastolic blood pressure, resulting in a wide pulse pressure. Very high systolic blood pressure, the low diastolic blood pressure, resulting in a wide systolic blood pressure. The patient can have a BP of say 120 by 20 or 130 by 10. Such wide pulse pressure, blood pressure can be seen in this AR patient, and this is classically responsible for all the signs and symptoms of aortic regurgitation. The other symptoms can be because of, once the patient will go for LV dysfunction, the patient can have dyspnea, orthopnea, PND, cardiopulmonary edema, and cardiogenic shock. Anything can be that's in the system. Or the patient can have chest pain. So why chest pain is that? Because of two reasons. First, the heart's oxygen demand is increased because the heart undergoes an eccentric hypertrophy, and there will be increased oxygen demand because of this eccentric hypertrophy. Secondly, because of the increased systolic wall stress, there will be increased oxygen requirement. But the blood flow to the heart predominantly occurs during diastole. Because there is diastolic shortening, when the heart rate increases, there will be increased risks of coronary hyperperfusion, resulting in chest pain. Even if the patient is having normal vessels, chest pain can worsen the chest pain can occur even with normal coronary arteries. Another point is important is when the heart rate decreases when you use a beta blockers, what happens is that the duration of diastole prolongs. When the duration of diastole prolongs, more volume of blood regurgitates from the LV into the aorta, so it will worsen all the clinical features. When the more volume of blood enters from the LV into the aorta, there will be reduced coronary perfusion, resulting in a worsening of myocardial ischemia. The fourth symptom will be pulmonary hypertension, the RV failure symptoms in the form of facial puffiness, raised AVP, abdominal distension, tail edema, right hypochondral pain, tricuspid agitation. These symptoms will be there. So these are the four symptom complex of aortic regurgitation, chronic aortic regurgitation. So what are the signs? Signs of aortic regurgitation. First, you have to know about the peripheral signs of aortic regurgitation. First, we will have D. Mussard sign. What is D. Mussard sign? This means nodding affected with heartbeat. That is called as the D. Mussard sign. Secondly, Durosi sign. This means when you keep the stress over the femoral artery and when you compress the femoral artery proximally, you will hear a systolic murmur. When it is compressed distally, you will have diastolic murmur. That is Durosi sign. This is the Traub sign. This is the pistol shots sound over the femoral artery. Then there is Hill sign. Hill sign means you have to measure the lower limb blood pressure and compare it with the upper limb blood pressure. Normally, the lower limb blood pressure will be lower limb blood pressure in aortic regurgitation will be higher than the upper limb blood pressure. If it is more than 20 millimeters of mercury, it is mild. If it is more than 40, it is moderate. If it is more than 60, it is severe. But nowadays, we do not grade Hill sign is not a marker of severity as of recent studies. Then you can have Twinkie sign. Twinkie sign means there will be increase in capillary and 8-bud pulsations. So these are the peripheral signs. Then there is a Gerhardt sign, Rosenbach sign, so the pulsary liver and spleen. So there can be number of peripheral signs. So what happens with the pulse rate? The pulse will go for high volume bounding pulse. They will have the blood pressure will be wide pulse pressure, high volume bounding pulse. This is called as the water hammer pulse. You have to hold the patient's heart and if you quickly rise, you can demonstrate this water hammer pulse. Then S1 will be soft. S2 will also be soft. So S1 is soft because of the increase in the LV and diastolic pressure. S2 is soft. S3 can be present if the patient is in LV failure. S4 is usually very rare in an AR case. Then coming to the murmur, there can be three murmurs in aortic regurgitation. First, the AR murmur. The AR murmur is an early diastolic murmur, best here in the second aortic area with the patient sitting and leaning forward. With this, it's an early diastolic murmur. This high pitched blowing early diastolic murmur. This is the AR murmur. If this AR murmur, if it's a valve disease, it can be seen in second aortic area. If it is a root disease, it can be seen in the normal aortic area. Second one is an AS murmur. This AS murmur can be because of a flow murmur. There will be increased volume of blood flowing across the normal aortic valve, producing a AS murmur is a functional ESM. AR murmur is an EDM. Then we got the Austin Flynn murmur. Austin Flynn murmur is an MDM at the apex. Why this Austin Flynn murmur occurs? This is because of the filling of the LV will push both the valves upwards and both the mitral valves will be pushed upwards, will produce a flow MDM at the apex. So three murmurs will be seen. So what shows online investigations? What is ECG? It shows ECG shows simple left ventricular enlargement with the evidence of LV stain. LV stain in the form of T inversions and ST depressions in lead 1, lead AVL and V5 and V6. LVS and LV stain that is classically seen. Chest X-ray can show, chest X-ray can show LV dilatation, and in case of a primary root problem, it can show dilatation of the ascending aorta. If you take lateral view, you can see the enlarged LV compressing, entering into the near the posterior area. You can encroach posteriorly. You can also find evidence of, in the late stages, pulmonary hypertension, RV enlargement. It's usually very rare, but in the late stages, it can also be seen. Then 2D echo. 2D echo is important because it can identify where the problem is, whether the problem is in the root or the problem is in the valves. Then it can identify. Then it can quantify what is the volume of blood that is regurgitating and what is the orifice size, and everything can be measured in echo. Echo can guide us identifying what is the severe AR. A severe AR by echo is diagnosed as this thing. The regurgitant volume is more than 60 ml per beat. The regurgitant fraction is more than 50%. The effective regurgitant orifice is more than 0.3 square centimeters. The vena contracta is more than 0.3 centimeters. And LV, this is the classical findings in LV enlargement. This is what is meant by severe regurgitation. It is important to establish a severe AR by echo because this has got therapeutic implications. Now, coming to management of aortic regurgitation. First, if the patient is with aortic regurgitation, if the patient is having breathlessness or the patient is having hypertension, you have to manage him with a combination of ACE inhibitors. If required, you can go for other drugs like ARBs. Either ACE or ARB can be given to reduce the valvular regurgitation. And the target blood pressure should be less than, systolic should be less than 140. This can be achieved with the help of vasodilators. Vasodilators predominantly an ACE inhibitor or a dihydropyridine CCBs or the help of hydralazine. This is a target blood pressure. You can use vasodilators in these settings. If the patient is going to be a known case of syphilis, then he has to be given a full course of penicillin treatment. If the patient is identified with a known case of Marfan syndrome, then he should be given he should be treated with beta blockers or ARB to prevent the dilatation of the ascending aorta. If the patient has got a previous history of infective endocarditis, he should be given infective endocarditis prophylaxis. If the patient is having chest pain, he should be treated with nitrates or long-acting nitroglycerins. Long-acting nitrates or topical nitroglycerins, they can be given. Then manage with surgery. Then first, which of the patients you take up for surgery? All patients with severe AR, which is mentioned earlier, who are symptomatic, take the patient up for surgery. If the EF is ejection fraction less than 50%, take the patient up for surgery. You can say 50% is a normal ejection fraction in a normal patient. Why do you say 50% is the cutoff in an AR patient? Because AR is a hyperdynamic condition. It has a normal EF of more than 70%. This EF of 40%, 50% is considered to be an evidence of LV dysfunction. So, two important things before surgically managing. The first thing is that a patient with AR will become symptomatic only if he develops LV dysfunction. Prior to that, he will be asymptomatic. Secondly, from the onset of LV dysfunction, if to the irreversible LA dilatation, it takes around 1 year. So, it is important to do 6 months once echo so that you can pick the patient once he develops symptoms and before he goes for irreversibility. That is the time we have to intervene the patient with the surgeries. So, symptomatic, EF is less than 50%, and end diastolic, left ventricular end systolic diameter is more than 50, end diastolic diameter is more than 65 mm. If the patient is having periodically when you do echo, if there is worsening severity of the AR murmur, or if the patient is undergoing some other cardiac surgery, then you can also take up this surgery. So what is the surgery can do? we always go for aortic valve replacement. Aortic valve repair can be done only in a few selected cases like patients with an infected endocarditis undergoing a caudal rupture or a traumatic avulsion of the aortic valve deflex. Only in these cases you can try aortic valve repair. In all other cases, replacement is better. Then in case of root disease, there is a procedure called as David's procedure. You just need to know the name. Here the valve will be spared, just the aortic root will be reconstructed. Valve sparing aortic root reconstructing procedure is called as the David's procedure. It can be used in patients with a primary disease of the aortic root, not involving the valve. Summing up, aortic regurgitation, it is of two types: acute management of acute AR. Acute AR has to be managed surgically, but before surgery, can try to reduce, can maintain the blood pressure by using a diuretics or a sodium nitroprusside. Never go for beta blockers. Why? Because beta blockers reduce the heart rate. When the heart rate is reduced, there will be more diastolic backflow of blood, so it will reduce the cardiac output. So don't go for beta blockers and don't go for IABP. This is the balloon pumping, intra-arterial balloon pumping. This will worsen the aortic regurgitation. So this sums up our discussion on aortic regurgitation. I hope you understood. Thank you.